Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark Roden, and in today's video we are going to be doing the good, the bad, and the ugly on the Lexus SC300/400. In case you're new here, the way this works is first I go over every little bit of information you need to know about the car. That's just basic info, things like trim levels, body styles, if it's rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, etc, etc. Then I get into what the community tends to do with them in terms of modifying them, if they drift them, if they street race them, if they're on the track. You know what I'm saying. And then we get into the good, bad, and ugly, which we'll go over when we get there. And then finally at the end of the video I tell you whether or not I think you should buy the car depending on the current situation that you're in. Song of the day is called How to Save a Life by the Foray. It is a song that was like, I didn't know it by its name, and then when I started listening to it I was like, oh, this song, and now it's in my playlist. It makes me feel like I'm in 2012 again, so it's a banger. Without further ado, let's go right into the good, the bad, and the ugly on the Lexus SC300 and 400. Alrighty, so like I said, first thing we need to talk about here, ladies and gentlemen, is all the basic info about this car. By the way, I just want to put this out there before we even get into the video. I love this car. I want one so bad. First off is the years made and the generation. It was made between the years 1992 to 2000, and it is the first generation of the Lexus SC, or third generation of the Toyota Soarer in Japan, which is pretty much the same thing. Either way, trim levels. There is technically trim levels between the two, but we're just going to talk about, whenever we talk about trim levels on this channel, we just talk about the ones that come with different engines. So for that, this car comes with the SC300, and that car comes with a 3-liter inline-6, making 225 horsepower. And then it also is available as the SC400, and that one comes with a 4-liter V8, making 270 horsepower. However, there is some slight differences between the two that aren't just engine and horsepower numbers. The first of which being that the 400 also gets a different spoiler and an automatic transmission only and gold badging, which isn't that interesting, but I actually kind of like it a lot with the gold badging over the regular badging, so I just thought it was worth mentioning. As for the body styles, the car is available as a 2-door coupe only. There's no convertibles, no sedans. If you want a sedan, just get an IS300 or GS300. Yeah, it's a 2-door coupe. As for the drivetrains, it is available as rear-wheel drive only, which is, in my opinion, good, but some people might be like, yeah. As for the transmissions, it is available as automatic mainly, and there are some manual as C300s, but those are going to be very, very hard to find and much more expensive, obviously. However, since it does come with a 2JZ, at least the SC300, it isn't that hard to swap this to a manual. Now, with the SC400, I've heard horror stories, so keep that in mind. As for the price, this car ranges drastically depending on condition and obviously manual transmission, but I would say I've seen some as low as $3,000. Still, yes, in 2025 I think you could find an absolute beat up clap box of an SC400 for right around $3,000. But if you're looking at like getting a very low mileage factory manual bone stock SC300, it can go all the way up to like $15,000, even more than that if you're getting an imported Soarer, which I know is not the same car, but I just wanted to mention it. So the price is pretty drastic on this car. It really depends on what you're looking for. As for the reliability and the gas mileage, however, the cars, both of them, the SC300 and 400, are both very reliable cars, especially the 400, and the 300 gets in a mile per gallon of 19 miles per gallon combined, which is not great, but keep in mind this car is a luxurious car. When it was being sold, that wasn't its main selling point, saving money on gas. It was meant to be a luxury car that, like, you know, executives could drive to work and feel cool driving it. And also, by the way, yes, the SC400 gets an even less mile per gallon than the 300. Not that bad though for a V8, but since it is a V8, it's a little bit worse. Alright, now what does the community tend to do with them in terms of modifying them? Well, for the drifting scene, the car is seen a lot. People love any car that comes with a JZ platform, and this car does come with a JZ platform. They're also relatively cheap. They're rear-wheel drive. They scratch all the boxes for drifting. Also, they just like JDM cars. Like, drifting guys always act like they have like this big smart reason as to why they pick their car. Then in reality, it's really just because they thought it looked cool, and like that's what the SC300 is. As for the rally / off-road community, this car is never seen. I don't think I've ever in my life once seen a rally SC300 for pretty obvious reasons. Long wheelbase, rear-wheel drive, very, very soft suspension, just not built for it. As for the street racing community, surprisingly, this car is seen sometimes. People do build them up for street racing, specifically if they swap it with a 1J or a 2J, GTE that is. But definitely not as much as like a Supra or something, obviously. As for the track racing community, again, definitely not really seen too much because they're very heavy cars. Like I said before with the rally racing stuff, they're heavy. And yeah, people don't like to race cars that are heavy. And then finally for the stance / show guys, the guys are just building up to look cool, and that's all they care about. Seen a lot because they do look very good, at least in my opinion. Obviously, most people would agree with that. That's why they build them up to look good. But if you don't, that's up to you. But now let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the way this works, in case you're new here, okay, new Nancy, is first I go over the good, which are just like great things about the car. They're selling points. If you walked into a Lexus dealership in 1996, they would have been like, hey, here you go. Next is the bad, which aren't actually bad. It's just a fun play on words due to that classic movie. But it's more of like a middle ground area. Like, if it affects you, then it's a bad thing. If it doesn't affect you, then who cares? Most of them are just not that big a deal. And then the ugly are genuine problems that you're going to have to face with the car. Anyway, let's get right into it with the good. First off is the price. Yeah, they're relatively cheap. Even if you get like a low mileage, clean, factory manual SC300 for 15 grand, realistically speaking, that's not that bad when you compare it to other JDM cars. Like, that's still cheaper than if you were to get a low mileage, clean, factory manual S13. So that's why I put the price into good. Next is the reliability. Like I said before, SC300s and SC400s are very reliable cars. Next up is the cargo space. Yeah, it's actually got a decent amount of it. And even if you run out of room in the trunk, you can always put stuff in the back seat, like I do with my Integra, because the back seats are pretty much useless. Next is the cabin space for the driver and passenger. Of course, like I just said, the back seats are pretty much useless. But for the driver and passenger, you got some leg room there, partner. Even if you are a taller gentleman, you got some leg room. So that's good. Next is the aftermarket support. Yeah, it's a 2JZ. It obviously has a ton of aftermarket support. Next is, it is increasing in value if you get a manual one. Even if you don't get a manual one realistically and you just take good care of it, in 5 years you could, honestly speaking, like double your profits, or double your price, I guess. You can make a lot of money, if is what I'm saying, if you like hold on to them and keep it nice and whatever. Next is the car is comfortable AF to drive, no matter your height. We kind of already mentioned this with the cabin space, but this also goes into just things like suspension and the seats. It's just a comfortable car. It's a luxurious car. This is like the LC500 of the 90s, if that makes any sense. Next is the car has decent cup holders. Again, I mention this all the time in my good, bad, and uglies. Some people think I'm joking when I say it. At first it was kind of a joke, but now it's honestly like a good point to bring up, because people do not understand how helpful cup holders are. I have an Integra and the cup holders are pretty damn small in that car. Driving a manual car and trying to hold on to an Arizona iced tea is not that fun, especially if you live in a city area, so just keep that in mind. Next is, it does have a bunch of cool technology in it. That's not seen in like many other 90s cars, like the beloved LED gauge, for example, is the first one that pops in mind, but it was a very, very good car in terms of the luxurious features, especially for the 90s. And finally, for the good, is it truly does encapsulate the damn near perfect combination of like luxury and performance for a 90s car. It'll be pretty hard to beat this if that's what you're looking for a 90s car. Obviously, yeah, if you have like unlimited money, just buy an S-Class, you know, that's obviously going to be much more luxurious and performance oriented than this car. But for the 90s, this thing was as good as you're going to damn get, man. And it's actually is pretty impressive to see all the features and creature comforts. What's the word I'm looking for? Creature comforts. Yeah, that's right. That this car had. All right, but now we are into the bad, and like I said, this is not actually bad things about the car. People get so mad. Actually, as a matter of fact, the Lexus guys were the ones that got so mad. This is the reason why I have to always like say it, is because when I made the GS300 video, so many people did not understand that the bad points are not actual bad points, and they also didn't understand that I was getting all my stuff from forums. So like, don't get mad at me because some other owner of the car was complaining about these things and people were agreeing with him. I'm getting it off forums, okay? Please calm down. First off, for the bad is the sound. Like I said in every one of my good, bad, and uglies, sound is obviously 100% personal preference. I think these cars sound great, but you might think they sound horrible. So here's a clip of an SC300 making some noise. Next is the looks. Same deal. It's obviously personal preference. Some people say they look like an egg. To those people, I kind of agree. They do kind of look like an egg, but that's one cool ass egg, man. It looks like a deviled egg, if you will. It's a cool looking car, in my opinion, but obviously that's 100% up to you. Next up is the car is pretty heavy. I don't think many people are going to care too much about this because you can always, first of all, do weight reduction. And second of all, it's not that heavy when you compare it to modern cars. It's just heavy for a 90s car. Like, yeah, when you compare it to like the IS300, yeah, it's a heavier car, but it also has a lot more luxurious features about it. It's also a lot easier to work on than that car is going to be because it's got such a larger engine bay. It pays off is what I'm trying to say. Even though it is heavier than the IS300, it is like there's pros and cons to both. Let's just leave it at that. Next up is the car does have a longer wheelbase, which makes it not the best canyon carver out there. A lot of people don't really bring these to the track, and that's kind of the reason for that. Well, that and the weight. Like I said, it's heavier with a longer wheelbase. It's not again, it's not the perfect performance car because it's the perfect performance and luxury car. I mentioned that earlier, but I'm just trying to make it very clear. Next is, it's going to be sketchy to go look at these cars on Facebook Marketplace or whatever. A lot of people don't take care of them, and just be careful. People that are trying to sell SC300s are definitely trying to just get a quick buck, so yeah, just please be careful. Everybody that owns an SC at this point knows what they are and knows what they're doing, so be careful again. Next is, it's almost impossible to find a manual. You could find swapped manuals quite often, but that's also pretty sketchy. And so if you're trying to find a factory manual of one of these cars, it's gonna be you're gonna have a tough time. Next is, I already mentioned this earlier, but there's not that much room in the back seats. Don't expect to be, you know, driving around your buddies for like 4-hour road trips in this car. It can be done, like, don't get me wrong, like, as long as your buddies are just, you know, resilient guys, like, they can sit back there for sure, but it's not going to be obviously the most comfortable experience for them. Next is, the AC tends to break in these things very easily. I've never in my life had air conditioning in any one of my cars. My Integra technically has it, but it might as well like have like some random homeless guy sitting in my dashboard, and every once in a while he just goes on me, because that's about the equivalent of my AC in the Integra. So I really don't care about that, but if you really want the AC, just be careful. They do tend to break. Next is, both engine options, my bad, aren't incredible for making power, but they're also not horrible for it either. It's kind of this weird little middle ground where, yeah, they can get some decent power out of it, but it's not like you got a GTE, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people do swap these for 1Js, 2Js, and there's kind of a reason for that. Next is, the car is automatic only, but obviously that's only in the SC400, although it might as well be automatic only in the SC300 just because of how hard it's going to be to actually find a manual one of those. Next up is, the car is rear-wheel drive only as well. I like that. I like rear-wheel drive cars. They're my personal favorite drivetrain, but some people that live in winter areas are gonna have a tough time with rear-wheel drive only, I guess. So maybe don't get it, I guess, for that. I don't think it's that big a deal, though. Everybody always complains about, you need all-wheel drive, you need all-wheel drive. Well, what about our parents? They survived perfectly fine with pretty much only rear-wheel drive cars, so I think we'll be okay. Next is all the problems that come with age, like rust, paint fade, seals, sunroof, and other miscellaneous items. They just may not work. Any car that's gotten to this age tends to have problems like that. And finally, for the bad, is the EVAP system seems to fail often. Obviously, it's not very fun, but it's not the end of the world. It's not going to destroy your car, but it's just a pain. And 90s cars, pretty much all of them are suffering from that nowadays. All right, but now we are into the ugly, my friend. The bad parts, the parts that genuinely are going to have to, like, you know, you're going to have to address at some point. And first, for the ugly, is that this was Toyota's Halo car. And at first, it sounds pretty cool, but what that means is that they tested a lot of new technology in it, and it shows now that the car is 30 years old. Electronics and wiring and stuff like that may prove to be a massive nightmare. Sure, you can get lucky and get one that's the wiring is perfect, the electronics all work and everything like that. Hey, good for you, but the vast majority of them are not going to be like that. They're going to have some wiring issues. It's just a downside, which kind of only proves the theory that car guys have been saying all this time, that all of these screens and stuff that they're putting in cars nowadays are not going to stand the test of time. In 20 years from now, they're going to be like very, very frustrating cars to own. And so I don't understand why people do that all the time. I like screens as much as the next guy and everything. Like, I like modern interiors, but dude, like, there's a reason why these supercars, Bugattis and Paganis, they don't put those screens in there. First of all, they look tacky, and so Bugatti doesn't want to do that. But second of all, because it just ruins the resale value. Those parts are so hard to keep working because it's just something that's going to stand the test of time. And this car is 30 years old, so just keep that in mind. And finally, for the ugly, is the horrible automatic transmission. It's not the worst 90s auto out there, don't get me wrong. Obviously, there are going to be worse 90s automatics, but if you get an auto, you're just going to wish it was a manual the entire time. 90s automatics were freaking ticking time bombs at best, and even if they do work, they're not fun. So, like, keep that in mind, man. I would it's so annoying because I would recommend waiting out for a manual, but then again, manuals are so hard to come by, and every time a good deal on a manual SC comes along, it's going to be eaten up in 2 minutes. So maybe the best deal at this point is to get an auto and just swap it to manual yourself. I would never recommend buying somebody else's already swapped manual, by the way. Just stay away from those. You don't want somebody else's project. So it's kind of a tough situation there. Alright, so my final thoughts. Do I think you should buy this car depending on the current situation that you're in, or the current guy that you are? Well, if you're just a daily driver guy, like you literally are just a regular old dude, you could not care less about how cool your car is, you just want to get from point A to point B, definitely not. There's no reason for you to buy one of these cars for the price that they're at. Just get a Civic, get a Camry, it's obviously a much better deal than something like this. As for the car guys looking for the daily drivers, like, obviously we tell ourselves we're just going to buy the dailies and to make our wives happy and stuff like that, but then at the end of the day we always buy something with a little bit more pep in its step than a regular old Civic or Camry. I can see it if you get one that's been well taken care of, but like I said before, please just be careful when going to look at these cars. There's a lot of hidden things that could be wrong with them. Everybody loves to talk about how reliable Lexus is and Toyota is, and they are. I'm not arguing that. Like 90s Lexuses, 90s Toyotas will go until 300, 400,000 miles all day long. However, there's just these little things that are just going to get on your nerves and might break, and you're going to be fixing it the entire time, and you don't want that if you can avoid it, so just be careful. Next is the Sunday cruiser folks looking to buy something, keep it in your garage, drive it once a week, and, you know, watch it rise in value and sell it, I guess. Again, I can see it if you get a low mileage bone stock manual one, but otherwise, just have fun with it, man. They're fun cars, and just throw them around. Next is the race car / project car folks. Obviously, those are the big boys, the ones that are buying the cars, turning them into drift cars, turning them into race cars, whatever it may be. Yes, please. Don't you want to drive an SC300 faster than it should go? Like, I feel like everybody in the world should experience that at least once. So yeah, if you want to build this car up into a race car or a project car, go nuts. Everybody does it already. There's a bunch of forums online to help you. Have a blast. I think it's a great idea. But ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's good, bad, and ugly on the Lexus SC300 / SC400. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content just ideal. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the comment section down below. And during the middle of that video, I accidentally started a Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege ranked match. I don't know how I did that. It just literally like started, so I was like, oh no. And halfway through the video I had to play an entire ranked Rainbow Six Siege match, because for those who don't know, if you leave you get banned, and I don't want to get banned. And so I played that entire match, and it was probably the worst match of Rainbow Six Siege I've ever had in my entire life. Gridlock, aka Lizzo, swung me on border at one point. I was in the archives door, and she swung into, not the archives door, the actually, yeah, I think it's archives. I don't know. The fountain door. I was on the fountain door, and she swung that fountain half ball and two-shotted my leg. I saved the clip. I was so flabbergasted. I was like, are you freaking kidding? It actually made me want to, and on top of all of that, I was Maestro. I don't even like playing Maestro. I hate Maestro, as a matter of fact. But at least he's a 3 armor, and she still shot me twice in the leg, and I was done for. What are you talking about, Ubisoft Montreal? That is the most ridiculous baloney hogwash I've ever been a part of. That game is highway robbery. I don't ever play it. It's my most played game of all time, but still, don't ever play it. I can't stand it. I just spit all over my own computer because of how angry I am. And it was on purpose, too, before you say, oh, Mark accidentally spit on his computer. Cancel Mark, he accidentally spit on his computer. No, it was on purpose. I meant to. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. I'm keeping the intros short now and the outros long because some people, I understood, like, they don't care about stuff that's going on in Mark Roden's life. So I'll keep it in the outro stuff from now on. That way the people that do care and are the true fans watch until the end anyways, and so they'll be able to see it at the end and stuff like that. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Das Vidania, and have a nice night.